You ever think about how we always talk about, like, the moon landing? You know, like, it was just one
Sure.
thing, like, one and done, plant the flag and come home.
Yeah.
But it turns out
There were a lot more.
there were 17,
17 successful landings.
17 missions that have landed on the moon
It's a lot.
successfully. Like, whoa!
It is.
So today we are diving deep into all of them.
What's really interesting is that it's not just about, like, the old missions anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just a historical thing. We are seeing this, like, resurgence.
Like, it's happening again.
Yeah, new countries.
New countries, it's so
The
exciting.
technology's a whole new era of space travel.
It feels like a whole new era. And to guide us through this whole lunar landscape,
Yeah.
we've got our expert here ready to break it all down.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh.
I mean, the moon is becoming such a hotbed of activity.
It really is.
And understanding the history of it really lets us understand what's happening right now.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
Back to the space race. The U.S. versus the Soviets vying for supremacy.
Right.
Trying to outdo each other.
Absolutely.
It must have been a wild time.
Yeah, it was very exciting. The Cold War was going on, and so,
Oh, right.
each side was trying to kind of prove that they were better.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to get these big monumental firsts in space.
And they both had some impressive wins.
Definitely.
I remember learning about Sputnik,
Yeah.
the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviets in 1957.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been a shock to the Americans.
Yeah, it was a huge shock. It was a real demonstration of Soviet technological prowess,
Oh, yeah.
and it really made the U.S. kind of step up their game.
So then the race was on,
Yeah,
and the moon became the ultimate prize.
it really could.
But before we get to humans on the moon,
Yeah,
there were some stepping stones, right?
totally.
Like robotic missions that kind of paved the way.
Right, you can't just send a human out into the unknown
No.
without testing it out a little bit first, right?
Right, of course.
So both the U.S. and the Soviets launched a series of these unmanned probes
Yeah.
to kind of figure out the environment
Yeah.
and test the landing technologies.
Right.
And, some worked and some didn't work.
For both.
Yeah, for both sides.
So let's talk about those early missions.
Okay.
I'm guessing they weren't all smooth sailing.
No, they weren't.
What were some of the challenges they faced?
One of the biggest things was just trying to figure out how to land on the moon.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the early missions, ended in what we call a hard landing, which is basically just a crash landing.
A crash.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the spacecraft would be damaged or destroyed.
okay.
And so what they needed to do was achieve what's called a soft landing,
Okay.
which means that you're coming down in a very controlled manner
Okay.
so that you have a gentle touchdown.
Okay, so you don't wreck everything.
Right. And then it allows you to actually deploy instruments and things like that,
Got it.
rovers and all that kind of stuff.
So who cracked the code first?
Well, the Soviets actually achieved that first
Oh.
with Lunar 9 in 1966.
Okay.
It's a big achievement because they sent back the first photos
Oh, wow.
ever taken from the moon's surface.
That must have been really exciting when those first photos came back.
Yeah.
I
I bet they were kind of grainy and everything, but
was going to say, probably
it was
not.
just super
Super
high.
definite. Not super high def, but still.
Like, still amazing.
Yeah, just to see the surface of the moon.
Like proof.
It was confirmation for the first time of what it actually looked like.
And we've come a long way from those early blurry pictures.
We have.
I mean, just look at the images we get from the Mars rovers now. It's incredible.
It's amazing.
So after Luna 9,
Yeah.
did the Soviets just continue to dominate?
They definitely kept going with it.
Okay.
They really wanted to keep exploring.
Okay.
Just a year later, in 1967, they launched the first spacecraft to orbit the moon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I thought that was us.
Yeah. A lot of
Okay.
people think that.
They think it was the Apollo missions, but the
Uh-uh.
Soviets actually did it first. And
Oh.
it sent back detailed images and it mapped the lunar surface.
So the Soviets orbited the moon before the U.S.
They did.
Wow. So many people think of, the Apollo missions as the first
I know a lot of people think that.
to orbit the moon.
Yeah. It's understandable because,
Yeah.
it was such a big deal when it happened.
That is a big deal.
Yeah. But the Soviets actually achieved a bunch of these lunar milestones
Wow.
before the U.S. did. But it was just overshadowed a lot
By Apollo.
by Apollo. Yeah, by the human element of the Apollo missions.
That's so interesting. It's like there's this whole other side to the story of lunar exploration that just
It's a really interesting history.
It's kind of overlooked.
It does. It really does.
And it just shows you that the space race was just so complex.
Yes,
With so many things happening at the same time.
It really was a back and forth.
Yeah.
Each side was pushing the boundaries of what was possible.
Speaking of pushing boundaries. Yeah.
The Soviets did something else that really blew my mind.
Okay.
They landed a rover on the moon.
Yeah. Lunar 1.
Lunar 1.
It landed in 1970.
That's before the U.S. lunar rover.
Yeah.
A whole year before.
Like a whole year before, yeah.
1970, a rover on the moon that predates
Pretty impressive.
our rover. What was it like?
Well, it was definitely different from what we think of as a Mars rover today.
Okay.
But it was really impressive for its time.
Okay.
It's kind of box-shaped.
Okay.
And it had 8 wheels. And it was powered by solar panels.
Oh, cool.
And it had all these scientific instruments on board
Oh, wow.
to study the lunar soil. And it took photographs and things like that.
I bet those pictures were amazing.
They were. And, this thing
Yeah.
explored the lunar surface for 11 months.
11 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it covered a distance of over 10 kilometers.
That's impressive.
It is, yeah.
What all did it do?
So it sent back data about the soil and radiation levels.
Wow.
And even like a possible lunar atmosphere. It found a lunar atmosphere?
Well, it detected signs of a possible one.
Oh, okay.
So we're still kind of figuring that out.
Gotcha.
But,
Yeah.
this thing was operational for 11 months
Back then.
back then, which is really impressive.
Yeah.
So, the Soviets were really killing it with their robotic Lunar program.
Yeah.
They did all these incredible things.
Yeah.
First, to land orbit, photograph, return samples,
Wow.
deploy a rover.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and it really laid the groundwork for all these future missions.
So it kind of seems like the Soviets were winning,
It seemed that way.
at least when it came to the moon.
Yeah,
But then came Apollo, and the whole narrative changes, right?
absolutely.
The U.S. was determined to make their mark.
Yep, and they did.
Yeah. And Apollo 11, with Neil Armstrong taking that one small step for man,
Yeah,
just an iconic moment
it really was.
in human history.
It captured the world's imagination.
Absolutely.
It really did, and suddenly everyone was thinking about humans being on the moon, not just robots.
And suddenly the U.S. was back in the game.
Yeah,
But before we go too far into the Apollo program,
I know.
I think it's really important to acknowledge those Soviet achievements.
Totally.
They were incredible.
They did so much.
And they really paved the way for a lot of what came later.
I completely agree. And it's also really important to
Yeah.
think about the collaborative spirit,
Yeah.
that's driving a lot of what we're doing today.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about one side winning or losing.
No,
It's about the whole of what we were learning
absolutely.
during that time.
Well said.
Thank you.
Now let's move on to the Apollo missions
Okay,
and what they accomplished.
let's do it.
Starting with Apollo 11.
Sounds good.
Apollo 11, talk about a giant leap for mankind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to top that,
It was
This is the first human steps on the moon.
It's pretty amazing.
But it wasn't just about planting the flag, right? There was a lot of science going on, too.
Oh, yeah, tons of science.
Okay.
Every mission was packed with experiments.
Really?
Yeah, like analyzing the geology and setting up instruments to measure moonquakes and solar wind.
Wow. So they were really trying to learn as much as they could.
Oh, absolutely. They were gathering data that would really help us understand the moon and the whole solar system better.
It's just wild to think about them up there
Yeah.
doing these experiments,
Yeah.
collecting samples.
Yeah.
It must have been like being on another planet.
Yeah, it pretty much was. They were
Yeah.
walking on a surface that no human had ever touched before.
Right.
A landscape shaped by billions of years of cosmic history.
Wow.
I mean, every step, every sample
Yeah.
was a new discovery.
Okay, so we had Apollo 11 with those iconic first steps.
Yeah.
What came next?
So Apollo 12 followed pretty quickly after that.
Okay.
It's a few months later.
Okay.
And this mission was all about showing that NASA could land with pinpoint accuracy
Oh, wow.
on the lunar surface. So they targeted the landing site of an earlier probe,
Okay.
Surveyor 3.
Oh, I've heard of that.
And the astronauts actually retrieved parts of Surveyor 3.
They went and got it.
They did.
Why?
Well, they wanted to bring it back to Earth to study it.
Oh.
They wanted to see how the materials had fared.
After being on the moon.
Yeah, after being exposed to the lunar environment for so long.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a really interesting experiment.
So were all the Apollo missions successful?
I
I mean, space travel, it's inherently risky.
it is. It's definitely risky.
Yeah.
Apollo 13
Yeah. Apollo 13.
is a really good example of that.
The one they made the movie about.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't something go wrong?
It did.
Yeah.
one of the oxygen tanks exploded
Oh, no.
on the way to the moon,
Oh, wow.
and it really crippled the spacecraft.
I remember that movie.
Yeah,
It was so intense.
it was, yeah.
So they made it back to Earth, right?
They did. It was a pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
It was a real race against time. But
Yeah.
they used the lunar module as a lifeboat,
Oh, wow.
and they managed to slingshot around the moon
Wow.
and come back home safely.
Wow, what a story.
It really is a testament to human resilience and problem solving.
For sure.
You know?
Okay, so a near disaster with Apollo 13,
Yeah,
but the program continued.
it did.
What other highlights stand out to you?
Well, Apollo 14 had a really memorable moment.
Okay.
Alan Shepard, the astronaut,
Yeah.
he hit golf balls on the moon.
He played golf on the moon.
He did.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a really lighthearted moment,
I bet.
you know, in the midst of all this intense science and exploration.
Yeah,
But it really captured the public's imagination,
I bet.
you know, and it reminded everyone that humans were exploring another world.
Didn't they bring the club back?
They did.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually on display now
Oh, wow.
at the USGA Golf Museum.
No way.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's a great little piece of history.
So cool.
So yeah, they kept sending missions after Apollo 14.
Okay.
Apollo 15 was a big one.
Okay.
That was the first mission to use the lunar roving vehicle.
Up rover.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of those things. They look so cool.
They do. They look like these futuristic dune buggies
Yeah.
pouncing around on the moon.
How far could they go?
They had a range of about 92 kilometers.
92 kilometers. That's
Wow.
pretty far.
So it gave the astronauts a lot more
So they
flexibility.
could actually explore.
Yeah, they could go beyond their immediate landing site
Right.
and collect more diverse samples
Yeah.
and really do more comprehensive studies.
Wow. I bet the views were incredible from up there.
I bet they were.
You know, cruising along on the moon,
Yeah.
looking back at Earth.
I mean, every astronaut who had the privilege of driving that rover
Yeah.
came back changed by the experience.
I bet.
You know, it really gives you a unique perspective on our place in the universe.
For sure.
Yeah,
So the Apollo program kept pushing boundaries,
it did.
collecting data,
Okay.
exploring further with each mission.
But at some point, it had to end,
It did.
right?
Yeah.
So what was the last Apollo mission?
The last one was Apollo 17,
Apollo 17.
which launched in 1972.
Okay.
And it was a really fitting end to this incredible program.
What made Apollo 17 so special?
Well, it was the longest lunar landing mission.
Okay.
They spent over 3 days on the surface.
Wow.
Yeah, they conducted extensive geological surveys, they collected a ton of samples,
Okay.
and they even discovered orange soil.
Orange soil.
Yeah,
What?
which indicates that there was volcanic activity
Whoa.
in the moon's past.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was a really cool discovery.
It seems like every Apollo mission had these amazing discoveries,
They really did.
you know?
Yeah, the Apollo program completely transformed our understanding of the moon,
Yeah.
and it really set the stage for all future lunar exploration.
But after Apollo 17, things went quiet for a while, right?
They did. Yeah, it seemed like the world had kind of moved on from the moon.
Like it had lost interest, you know? The Cold War rivalry that had really fueled the space race
Right.
kind of eased up.
And priorities shifted.
They did?
So for a while, it was just the U.S. and the Soviets
Yeah.
who had been to the moon,
Right.
you know?
Just their flags.
Just their flags planted on the lunar surface.
Yeah.
But hold on a second.
Yeah.
You said earlier that
Yeah.
17 missions
Yep.
have successfully touched down on the moon.
That's right.
So who else joined the party?
Well, remember how we were talking about all those kind of overlooked achievements?
Right?
So while the U.S. and the Soviets were taking a break,
Yeah.
other countries were watching and
Oh,
learning,
Okay.
and they were preparing to launch their own lunar missions.
So the story of moon landings isn't over.
Not at all.
It's just getting more interesting.
They're getting way more interesting.
Okay. I'm hooked.
Good.
Tell me more about these new players in the lunar game.
All right.
Who else has landed on the moon?
So you might be surprised to hear this, but the title for most moon landings
Okay.
is actually a tie.
A tie.
And it's not between the U.S. and the Soviets.
Okay.
They're not the only ones with 6 successful missions.
Wait a tie. Who else has landed on the moon 6 times?
Let me give you a hint.
Okay.
Okay. Think of a nation known for like rapid technological advancements.
Okay.
A really ambitious space program.
Okay.
One that's been making a lot of headlines recently.
Hold on, China.
That's right.
China.
China has become a major force in lunar exploration.
Wow. I have to admit, I did not see that coming.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize it.
Okay, so rewind. When did China first land on the moon?
So their first successful landing was with Chang-3 in 2013.
Change 3.
Yeah.
Oh,
And they even deployed a rover
really?
called U-2.
You
It
too.
was the first lunar rover since the Soviet Lunokhod.
So for decades, it was just the U.S. and the Soviets with rovers,
Right.
and then China comes along.
They revived the rover game.
That's impressive.
Okay.
What else have they done?
Well, in 2019, they did something truly groundbreaking.
Okay.
The Chain-4 mission.
Ignore.
It was the first ever soft landing on the far side of the moon.
Wait, the far side?
The far side.
Like, why is that such a big deal?
It's a bigger deal than you might think,
Okay.
because the far side of the moon is permanently facing away from Earth.
Oh, right. I remember learning about that.
Yeah, so we never see it directly.
So what's so special about the far side?
Well, it's a region with a lot of mysteries.
Okay.
Scientists think that it has a thicker crust and a different composition
Then the near side.
than the near side.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it could offer some really unique insight.
Into how the moon formed.
Exactly, yeah, the moon's formation and evolution,
Ah.
the whole thing.
But if we can't see it,
Yeah,
how do we even talk to a spacecraft over there?
that was one of the biggest challenges
Yeah.
because direct communication is impossible.
Right.
So China had to launch this relay satellite
Oh, wow.
to kind of bounce the signals back and forth
Yeah.
so they could communicate with the lander and the rover.
So what have we learned from Chang 4?
Well, it's still operational,
Oh, wow.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's sending back data about the geology,
Okay.
the environment, and it's even doing radio astronomy experiments.
It's incredible, a rover exploring a place we can't even see from Earth.
I know, it's pretty cool.
Okay, so China is 3 for 3
Yeah.
with successful landings.
Right.
Rover on the far side.
Yep.
I'm guessing they didn't stop there.
They did not stop there.
Okay, what came next?
So in 2020, China's Chang'e 5 mission
Okay.
retrieved and returned lunar samples to Earth.
Whoa.
The first lunar sample return since the Soviet Union's Luna 24 in 1976.
Wow, so they brought back pieces of the moon.
They did.
That's amazing.
So that brings their total to 4 successful landings,
4 down 2 to go to catch up.
right?
I'm guessing they have even bigger plans for the future.
Oh, they do. They have some really ambitious plans.
Like what?
Well, they've announced plans for Change 6,
Oh.
which is another sample return mission.
Okay.
But this time, they're targeting the South Pole Aitken Basin.
The South Pole Aitken Basin.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest and largest impact craters in the solar system.
Wow. Okay, what's so special about that place?
Well, it's a region of huge scientific interest
Okay.
because the impact that created the basin
Yeah.
likely excavated material from deep within the lunar mantle.
So we could learn about what's inside the moon.
Exactly. Yeah, it
Oh.
hold clues to the moon's early history.
Wow, this is incredible. China's lunar program is so much more advanced than I realized.
Yeah, they've been really making strides.
Okay, so that brings their total to 5.
Right.
5 successful missions.
Yep.
But you said they've matched the U.S. and the Soviets with 6.
I did.
So what was their 6th mission?
Their 6th mission landed just last year in 2024.
Okay,
Chang 6.
another Chain 6.
This one targeted the lunar South Pole.
The lunar South Pole.
Yeah, which is becoming a very popular destination.
Okay, why all the interest in the lunar South Pole?
Well, scientists believe that the lunar South Pole has these permanently shadowed craters
Okay.
that could harbor water ice.
Water ice on the moon? Are you serious?
Yeah, it's not confirmed yet,
Okay.
but multiple missions,
Yeah.
including NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter,
Uh-huh.
have detected signatures consistent with water ice.
Okay, but why is water ice on the moon such a big deal?
Well, it could be a game changer
For
for future lunar exploration.
How so?
Well, because water ice could be a really valuable resource
Okay.
for drinking water,
Okay.
oxygen production,
Oh, wow.
and even rocket fuel.
So like a lunar gas station.
Yeah, kind of.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it seems like everyone's got their eye on the lunar South Pole these days.
You're right.
Okay,
Okay.
so China has 6 landings.
Yep,
The U.S. and the Soviets each have 6.
that's right.
That's only 18.
You're forgetting about someone.
Oh, right. You said 17,
Sweet
17?
ass.
17 moon landings?
Yep.
Okay, who are we missing?
You're forgetting about 2 key players.
Okay.
India and Japan. India and Japan.
Yep.
No way. Tell me about their missions.
So India's Chandrayaan-3 mission
Okay.
landed near the lunar South Pole in 2023,
Oh, wow.
making them only the 4th nation to achieve a soft landing on the moon.
That's incredible. And what about Japan?
Japan's Smart Lander for investigating moon or SLIM.
Slim.
Yeah, SLIM.
Okay.
Made a pinpoint landing
Oh, wow.
earlier this year, 2024.
Wow, 17 moon landings.
I know, it's amazing.
It's amazing to think about how far we've come.
Yeah?
You know, from that first grainy photo from Luna 9.
They go.
It's not just a two-country race anymore. It
If
feels
you-
like the whole world is getting in on the action.
And it's only going to get more exciting from here.
Really?
Yeah, the moon is becoming a hub of activity
Okay.
with nations and private companies all setting their sights on lunar exploration
Wow.
and even settlement.
A lunar settlement. Are you talking about people living on the moon?
Yeah, I mean, it's not science fiction anymore.
Yep.
People are having serious discussions about establishing a permanent human presence on the moon,
Wow.
whether it's like a research station, a mining outpost, or even a tourist destination.
A moon vacation. Sign me up.
So we've got this resurgence in lunar exploration.
Yeah.
Multiple nations are vying for a place on the moon,
It's incredible.
and there's the potential for a permanent human presence.
What's driving all this new interest in the moon?
Well, there are a few things going on.
Okay.
First, advancements in technology have made space travel a lot more accessible
Okay.
and affordable
Okay.
than it used to be.
Right. Like I've heard about all these private space companies.
Exactly.
And reusable rockets.
Yeah.
It seems like the cost of getting to space is going down.
It is, yeah. And second, there's a growing awareness of the moon's potential resources.
We talked about the water ice, but are there other resources?
Yeah, there are some other valuable resources on the moon.
Like what?
Well, it's rich in helium-3,
Okay.
which is a rare isotope that could be used in fusion reactors. Yeah, and it also has deposits of rare earth elements.
Which are crucial for...
A lot of modern technologies, yeah.
So the moon isn't just a scientific curiosity anymore.
It's not.
It could be a source of valuable resources.
It could benefit humanity in a lot of ways, yeah.
And then, of course, there's the geopolitical element, too.
Right.
You know?
Countries want to show off their technological abilities.
Right.
It's a matter of national pride.
It's fascinating to see how the motivations for lunar exploration have changed over time.
Yeah.
You know, from the Cold War rivalry
Yeah.
to scientific discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's resource acquisition and national prestige.
Yeah, it's almost like the moon is a mirror,
Whoa.
reflecting our own priorities and ambitions as a species.
I like that.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
we have.
From the early days of the space race to
Yeah.
the current resurgence
Yeah.
in lunar exploration.
It's been a journey.
It really has.
Yeah,
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier
sure.
about the lunar South Pole.
Yeah,
You said it's a prime target for future missions,
it is.
including NASA's Artemis III.
Yes.
So what can you tell us about Artemis III and its goals?
Well, Artemis III is going to be a huge mission.
Okay.
It's aiming to land the first woman and person of color on the moon,
Wow.
which is a huge milestone.
Yeah.
And it's targeting the lunar South Pole,
Oh, right.
with all that scientific and resource potential.
It feels like Artemis III is the beginning of like a whole new chapter
It really does.
in lunar exploration.
Yeah.
You know?
It's more than just a symbolic step.
Right.
It's about building a sustainable presence
On the moon.
on the moon.
Yeah.
And paving the way for future missions.
Right. It's not just a one-off trip. It's
Right.
like the first step in a much larger plan.
Exactly. Artemis III is just the beginning.
Wow.
NASA has all these plans for the Artemis program,
Okay.
including building a lunar gateway,
A lunar gateway.
which is like a space station that would orbit the moon,
Wow. Okay.
and then eventually a base camp
A lunar base camp.
on the surface.
Wow.
So it's pretty exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah. But keep looking up
Keep looking up.
and keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been great having you here.
Thank you for having me.
And until next time, keep looking up and keep exploring.
Tuning into